Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Reza Supandi, and I'm a product marketing manager here at MicroStrategy. Today's topic is a great one. We're going to be talking about how we're going to get started with MicroStrategy Mobile SDK. I want to thank you all for joining today's top tip session that is hosted by our MicroStrategy support team. Now, this session will begin momentarily, but first, I do have a few housekeeping items that I want everyone to know before we get started. First off, I want to encourage everyone to use our YouTube live chat feature, where you can see on the right hand side of the window on your desktop or below if you're watching us on mobile. You can use this to submit any questions you have throughout the presentation. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end of this presentation, and we'll go through the questions that you all submit. It's going to be a good time. Also, just a reminder, this session will be recorded and shared afterwards, so I encourage you to refrain from sharing any environment-specific questions during the Q&A section. For today's session, we are joined by a plethora of awesome MicroStrategy experts in mobile SDK. You'll be hearing from David Chua, our mobile SDK product specialist, and Regina Williams, who is a senior mobile architect on our North American support team. David and Regina will be sharing with you all an overview of MicroStrategy Mobile customization process, and they will share several demonstrations of various rebranding techniques. We also have Holly Stevens, our product manager from our technology team, who will share some key features in the product roadmap, as well as Anahi Serrano, who is a senior education consultant, to share some additional courses to help you learn more about this topic. And finally, we have Heather Brewster, another member of our North American support team, behind the scenes reviewing any of the questions posted on the chat feature throughout the presentation so that our experts can answer them for you during our Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Before we get into our content, though, we'd like to remind you that today's presentation covers our latest platform release, MicroStrategy 2021. MicroStrategy 2021 is an enterprise-grade platform where you can leverage modern analytics on any device of your choosing, and you can take advantage of on any open architecture. This open architecture allows you to extend, integrate, and embed MicroStrategy across your existing investments with a wide variety of products, including, of course, Mobile SDK, the topic that we're going to talk about today. It's also important to highlight that MicroStrategy 2021's mobile platform offers multiple strategies for transformational mobility depending on your business needs, including Hypermobile, MicroStrategy Library, and MicroStrategy Mobile. Lastly, I want to mention that Mobile SDK also follows our platform support lifecycle. So the end of the year is coming up, and with that, the end of support for MicroStrategy 2019. So it's important to begin planning your upgrade and to begin utilizing the latest version of MicroStrategy Mobile SDK. And with that, I would like to go ahead and start our presentation and hand it over to David Chua to share his expertise on MicroStrategy Mobile SDK. How you doing, David?
Doing good, Reza. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Happy Friday. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to you to talk about MicroStrategy Mobile SDK.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is David. I'm a product specialist for MicroStrategy, and today we'll be introducing the MicroStrategy Mobile SDK with the goal of walking you through from starting the project to deploying it into a device. Next slide, please. So to start, what is MicroStrategy Mobile SDK? It is a project and software framework that allows developers to create mobile applications that can automatically consume and display MicroStrategy business intelligence data. Some of the key functionalities are that it's pre-configured to work with Xcode and Android Studio out of the box. Just make sure that you are downloading the correct download. It's also able to support integrations with app config compliant EMM providers like Mobile Iron and BlackBerry. On top of that, developers are able to rebrand, reconfigure, and extend capabilities of the MicroStrategy Mobile SDK, including adding like enable notifications. And to understand, there are three different key scenarios that when using Mobile SDK. The first one is embedding, which is adding the MicroStrategy content into your application. Integration, basically using MicroStrategy data to support your own custom app. and extending, which is using third-party applications such as AR kits to use to consume and process MicroStrategy data. Here, you're able to see the full MicroStrategy mobile architecture, including the mobile app, mobile server, and how it connects with the intelligence server and the warehouse and metadata. But today, we'll be focusing specifically on the mobile apps and the mobile server portion. So to start, we'll be walking you through the basic requirements and how to set up the mobile SDK. As a general requirement for the development portion, you do require 4 basic things. One is having a Mac machine, since this will be running specifically on Xcode. The second is a configuration URL from the mobile server, which you'll be using to connect into the iServer. And finally, the mobile SDK. In the mobile SDK download, there is a README text for the Xcode version. Please keep in note that this is important, as using the correct Xcode version does have an effect with your mobile applications. For the development side, you do require an Apple developer or an enterprise account, as well as a test device. And while a test device is optional, since the Xcode does have its own simulator, we do recommend having your own test device if you're going to be using any physical things on the machine, such as the camera or voice recording aspect, as simulator does not have this feature. And here we just see the basic layout of the Xcode IDE. You can see the build controls, project navigator, toolbar, the file inspector, debugger area, as well as the file editor, which as you can see here contains right now the project and target settings. In this first demo, we'll be showing you how to build and run the MicroStrategy project in a simulator.
To get started with Mobile SDK, simply go to the MicroStrategy download page. Here we'll use the drop-down to choose mobile. And for today's purpose, we'll be focusing on the Mobile SDK for the iOS. Clicking the iOS button opens up a license agreement, which allows you to download the zip file required to start the project. Once you have the zip file unzipped, click on the folder. This contains 2 files. One is the DMG file, as well as the README text. Opening the README text allows you to see the Xcode version needed for the project. Please note that using newer or older version can cause some issues, so we advise to use the specific Xcode version required for the project. And moving forward, double-clicking on the DMG file opens up another license agreement. Opening this up, you'll be able to see 4 files contained in the DMG file, as seen here. For the purpose of this project, I created a Eclipse Co as the example company that we'll be using for this project. And here, I'll just copy the 4 files and drag that to the folder. This could take a little bit of time, and as the files are downloading, once everything is downloaded, you can exit out of the DMG file. And here you'll see the MicroStrategy Mobile folder, which we'll be focusing on. Clicking on the MicroStrategy Mobile.xcode project opens up the Xcode project. And here we'll be able to see the Xcode UI. At the very top, you'll see the toolbar, which contains the target as well as the device for the simulator. For this purpose, I'll be using the iPad Pro 9.7-inch. On the left side, you'll see the navigator area, which contains basically the folder structure that contains the code, storyboard, and configuration file. The middle portion is the editor area, where you can see the specific files you have opened. Also at the bottom, you can go view, and the debugger area, show debug if you want to debug the area. And on the right side is the utility area. Once the Xcode project is open, we simply want to ensure that the project runs without any issue. Sometimes downloading from the download site can cause some issues, so we want to make sure that we download a working project. By doing that, well, we just click on the play button, and this would take a little bit of time. As you can see at the top of the toolbar, it's building the mobile project for the iPad specifically, as that's the current target. Opening this shows that the build succeeded, and this opens up the simulator, which the very first time you open up a project in the simulator, it could take a little bit of time. Just note that portion, and once that's opened, you'll be able to see a working mobile project. Here we're seeing that the mobile project is launching, and once this is done, the project opens up and we're good to go.
Now that we have our project up and running, I'll be walking you through how to do some of the mobile application rebranding. So there are a couple different types of mobile visual rebranding that you can do in aspects of the user interface. We'll be showing a couple of demos, but there are some demos that will be available after the webinar, including like creating your own customized launch screen and custom login screen. So today we'll be just walking through two demos, which is for application name and the application icon. So for this demo, I'll be walking you through how to rebrand the application bundle identifier and the display name. The bundle identifier will be explained in the demo as well.
This demo deals with changing both the bundle identifier and the app name. The app name is simply what you want the app name to be, while the bundle identifier is a unique name within Apple's ecosystem. This means that no two applications can have the same bundle identifier name. To make the changes, it's actually pretty simple. The first thing we do is head over to the navigator area and double-click MicroStrategy Mobile. This opens up the editor area where we're able to see the two targets, MicroStrategy Mobile iPhone and MicroStrategy Mobile iPad. We'll be editing both for practice, but the first thing to do is change the display name to what we want our app name to be called. In our case, it will be our company, which is Crescent Co. And for the bundle identifier, you'll see that it uses com.microstrategy. This is because Apple encourages developers to use reverse domain name notation. So in your case, you'll replace com.microstrategy with your own company. We'll go further details later on when we discuss creating Apple developer accounts, as well as creating profiles and certificate. But for our case, we'll just change the com.microstrategy to com.crescentco.iPhone to make sure that the target is iPhone. And for the iPad portion, we'll do the same thing where we change Crescent Co for the display name, and the bundle identifier will now be Crescent Co iPad. And you can double check. And once that's done, you don't have to hit save. This is saved automatically, but you do want to make sure that the build succeeds. So to do that, we hit on product, hit build, and you can see at the toolbar that it uses the build. And once that's succeeded, we want to make sure that the app launches properly. And we just hit play, and this launches it to the simulator, where we see that the name of the app has actually been changed to Crescent Co. You can see this again by hitting the home button, where you can see Crescent Co as the name of the app that we created.
And in this next demo, I'll be showing you how to rebrand the application icon. Do note that you would want to have the images ready, and it's based on the specific sizes. The application, the demo itself will talk about the limitations and the warnings that the Xcode will provide if you are providing the incorrect sizes.
This demo deals with changing the app icon. The app icon is integral to creating an app. It allows users to be able to easily identify the app within the phone. For this demo, I've created a folder that already contains the various sizes that's needed for the logos. To make the icons, you can use specific tools online, Photoshop, or there's also apps on the App Store, which creates the specific sizes needed. This is important because while every icon is not required when building the app, It is recommended to prevent any issues where the icon that's being used is squeezed too small or stretched too big. To start, we'll go navigate to the resource folder and open up the image.x assets. You can see here that there are two targets, the app icon and the iPhone app icon. We'll be editing both for practice again. So to do the changes, we'll basically hit and drag across to select all the icons, and clicking delete actually deletes the files, and you can actually see the sizes required for each space. Do note that this is important to use the right size, as the app does complain when you're using something too big. For example, let me put the 50 by 50 on the 20 by 20. You can see that there is a warning where you click on the warning, you're able to see that the app complains that it is too big. So to delete that, simply right click on the item and delete to remove it. So for now, to do the changes, we'll simply go through the entire app icon and put in the icon that we need with the correct sizes. And by doing so, we'll be changing the icon on the home page. We'll see once this is completed. So we go through the app, editing all the apps. And again, we'll be doing this on the iPhone app icon. Doing so, we just same thing, drag and right click and delete all the items. And then from here, do the same thing. And you just want to make sure that you double check that there's no errors and that everything is filled out. And once this is done, you hit product and build to make sure that nothing broke. And once the build succeed, we'll run this on our simulator, and you can actually see the app icon being changed. So once that's done, hit play, and this will launch a new instance. And you can see that the app icon has now changed to the crescent moon, which we wanted. And that basically wraps up this demo.
And the final type of rebranding that I'll be talking about is the login screen. Do note that the demo will be available afterwards. But in this case, you just want to make sure that you focus on two different files. One is the MSI authentication settings.plist for targeting the iPad, and the MSI authentication settings _iPhone.plist when you're changing the login screen for an iPhone. There is an KB article that's also available, and we'll also be providing that. So now that we have talked about the visual aspects, we'll be talking a little bit more about the functional branding for MicroStrategy Mobile. In terms of functional rebranding, you can think of visual rebranding as the UI aspect, which is like just the user interface. For functional rebranding, it's basically using like the user experience. So this can be basically improving like the bundling of images to improve performance, enhancing workflows using our mobile URL API, and creating custom URL schemes to launch your specific apps. In the next slide, you can see like the URL scheme. It's basically a iOS SDK. It's a feature provided by iOS SDK to launch apps via URL. By using this, you are able to open apps within the app. So let's say like in the image seen here, the MSCR app launches the MSCR app, while the Crescent Co will launch the specific Crescent Co app. You can use the URL scheme in conjunction with the mobile URL API, which Regina will be talking in the next slide. And now I present to you, Regina.
Thank you, David. My name is Regina Williams, and I'm the manager of SDK team and the senior mobile architect. As David mentioned, using the custom URL scheme in conjunction with the mobile URL API gives lots of benefits. The biggest one is ensuring that that all of the navigation and workflow that you've defined stays within your app. So for example, in the screenshot, it actually shows on this one device, I have my customized Crescent Co app and the out-of-the-box MicroStrategy app. In the scenario where there could even be a end user can even have another app downloaded whose base also happens to be the MicroStrategy mobile app. So it's very important that any type of mobile URL API that's used in the documents reference your custom URL scheme instead of the default MSTR URL scheme. Other benefits that it brings, it allows you to perform deep linking activities within your own app. You can launch panel stacks. You can launch info windows. You can also define custom navigation to go between your documents in your application, as well as go back to previous screens. You can even do things with third party. Like for example, you can send a text message if you're using the mobile app on your iPhone, and also open up like Google Maps and sending a specific location to go to. Okay, next slide. So to do that, just a few steps. First thing you want to do is modify the image or the text box that you want to add the link to. When you right click on that one, choose Edit Links, then go to the navigate to a specific URL, and then you want to type in your event there. So in this case, we are using the URL event that will trigger the settings page to open in the dashboard. So in step 3, once you do that change in the edit links area, step 3 will show the actual dashboard show the settings when you actually tap on that link. Next slide. The next thing I want to talk about, which is also another very powerful feature, is pre-configuring MicroStrategy Mobile to point to a specific environment. The first step in doing that is creating that mobile configuration on the mobile admin server. First thing you'll see there is you have to choose your device type, whether it's iPhone, iPad, and also for Android, we have phone or tablet. And you can set different things there, like selecting which documents you want to pre-cache, other cache handling strategies, whether to keep it when you exit out the app or maintain that cache between launches, between uses, schedule how often to check for subscriptions, define your connectivity with the iServer, and also determine what the user is going to see when they launch your app. In this case, like for example, setting the home screen document. Okay, the next slide. Step 2 is to now take that mobile configuration XML and embed that inside of our Xcode project in the preferences XML file. And for the steps to do that, once your admin has modified and created the mobile configuration, the content of that configuration will be on the mobile server inside of the XML mobile folder. The content in that file will get copied over to our preferences.xml inside of the project. And step 3, which is the most important step, is now that we're in our Xcode project at this point, we've copied over the preferences. The next step is to modify the MSTR customizations plist to set specific settings on how the preferences will be used in future updates. You can go to the next slide. So here in this plist file, we have 3 very important settings. One is called Use as Bundled Preferences. Then there's Override Existing Preferences, and there's Update Existing Preferences. So these go hand in hand with the preferences XML that we just copied in. The first setting, if that is set to true or yes, what that means is that the MicroStrategy app will see that we'll take that preferences XML that we just copied and store that into the app's device cache store. And it will use that preferences XML to decide which environment to connect to, which home screen document to show. And the override existing preferences, if this one is set to true or yes, means that if there's a brand new configuration, so say for example in the mobile configuration in the mobile app administrator, a second mobile configuration was created with a different configuration IDs. They use configuration IDs to distinguish between the ones. If this one was now pushed or bundled into into preferences XML for a later release, this would cause MicroStrategy to say, oh, okay, this is a new configuration. If this is set to yes, I will override my existing preferences with this new brand new preferences coming in. And the update existing preferences is if in the future the existing mobile configuration updates for any reason, if there's like an upgrade and or you change some settings or you change the pre-cached documents that are listed there, and there's a new configuration coming in, having this set to yes, as well as the use bundle preferences set to yes, will cause that new updated preferences to override the old one, and now the app will use that one instead. So this is very, very important. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the troubleshooting section on what to do to remedy the situation if these settings weren't changed and the user had already received the app. So let's go to the next slide. And for this, we have a demo that shows exactly what I just talked about. And we're just going to step through here on doing the mobile configurations, setting up a URL API, and also modifying the URL scheme in the project. Let's go over how to create the mobile configuration, set the URL scheme, and the URL scheme in the mobile URL API. First thing we're going to do here is create the mobile configuration for the iPad. Let's go ahead and set the name for the mobile configuration. In this case, we're going to call it Crescent Co. Home. And for now, I'm going to keep the default settings. I will change the update configuration to update like every 6 hours. But other than that, in this case, I'm going to keep everything else as default. Next, I'm going to set up the connectivity settings in the mobile server. I'm currently on the mobile server that I'll be connecting to. So that's going to be the TYWC as the host name. 9393 is the port. And I'm just going to grab this from the URL so I can use that as the mobile server path. In this case, I'm using J2EE, HTTP. I'm going to keep this standard for now. Let's configure the project. By default, I'm going to choose the tutorial, MicroStrategy tutorial. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and configure the home screen. I'm going to set the home screen to there's a couple options there. The default one, set it to a particular folder or set it to the home screen. In this case, I'm going to set it to the home screen. Can navigate to the place in MicroStrategy Web and choose my home screen document and go ahead and hit save. Now, once I have this mobile configuration created, next thing I'm going to do is generate the mobile configuration URL. I'm going to keep the port included, hit generate, copy my link, and then just hit save here. The next thing I like to do is actually use this decoder. And what I'm going to do is render this load this link in the browser so I can see the content of the XML. Very, very handy. This way I can keep the URL and then keep that for future updates or upgrades, and then I can always just access the mobile configuration by that. Now here, if I take a look at that counter variable, notice that it was set to 0. What I'm going to do here is just make any change. I could make a change, or I could actually just hit save. And doing that, when I go back to my mobile configuration and hit refresh, notice here that that counter variable has updated to 1. So this was what I was referring to earlier with the update existing preferences. This is that counter variable that it's looking for. Okay, so now that I have my mobile configuration, I'm going to do the page source and hit the word wrap, and then go ahead and copy from the CNF node to the ending CNF node. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Xcode project, and I'm going to locate the preferences XML under the iPad, and I'm going to replace the out-of-the-box content with my custom mobile URL, mobile configuration XML. Notice here's from the CNF to the CNF. The counter is set to 1. And the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and update the URL scheme since I'm here. And the one I'm going to use is Crescent Co. Crescent-Co. The file that I'm currently in is the info iPad plist, and I'm changing it in 2 places, under the URL scheme item 0 and also under the usher redirect scheme. Once I save the changes, we're going to exit out of here. And now what we're going to do is go into MicroStrategy Web and just use the mobile URL API to configure some custom navigation using the URL scheme that I just used. All right, so I'm going to browse to my project and go to that dashboard that I just set as my home screen. Go into edit mode. And the image is right there, the one that I want to use. I'm just going to right click on this and choose properties and formatting. I could have also put it in edit links. I have two options there. And I'm going to go ahead and copy over the link I'm going to use. This one is pretty cool. So it allows me to send an email of the dashboard screen, of a screenshot of the dashboard. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to use a Crescent Co URL scheme, which is what I just used in my project, just to make sure it's going to get called. Here I have the event that's used to do it, the email subject is set, and I'm actually using an auto text macro there to pass the document name dynamically. So I'm going to hit save here. And the next thing we're going to do is actually run the dashboard in mobile. Okay, now that we're back, I'm here on my device. I have the app compiled here onto my iPad. I'm going to hit run, enter in my credentials, and my dashboard is going to display when I click on that email link. Notice here that it went ahead and added the document name, and I can shoot off an email just like that. Okay, so also I don't know if you noticed there, but that login screen is the example login screen that that David Chua was talking about of the demo that he created that will be available after the training. Okay, so next we're going to talk about compilation and testing and understanding the different options that you have for doing the testing. The first thing and the quickest thing, obviously, is to use the iOS simulator to preview your dashboard and your custom app on your device. This is the easiest mode. There are some limitations, like, for example, you won't be able to have access to camera, if you have a dashboard that's taking pictures or scanning a QR code or something that needs to have the camera. That option won't be in the iOS simulator, but this is like a really quick way just to make sure that your dashboard's lining up correctly in all the different devices that a user could possibly use. So let's go to the next one. So another option is the free Apple account. This isn't something that Apple didn't offer originally, but they started to introduce this right around the Xcode 7X timeframe. And it's really cool. So using your using your free Apple ID that most people have, you can easily just maybe one or two apps. I think the documentation says you can go up to 5 apps, but in my experience, I haven't been able to get more than 2 on there. But what you can do is, instead of like talking about one of the options later, which is like the paid Apple account, you can actually run a couple of apps directly on your device for testing. The app does expire after a few days, but it's a really great way to get an idea, to quickly test for free without joining one of the programs. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk about the options that Apple has as far as their paid accounts. So there's a couple options there. Apple has both paid accounts, both offer you a way to test directly up to 100 devices per year. Devices could include iPhones, iPads, I believe tvOS as well, count as a device. So there's 2 types. There's the developer account, and then there's the enterprise account. The developer account will allow you is for $99, and it will allow you to submit your app to the App Store through App Store Connect. The other option is the enterprise account, and this one will allow you to deploy in-house to your employees directly, either through some kind of EMM or MDM service, or a custom-built website where they can go and download. Once you've decided which one you want to use, or both, so for example, if a company wants to both send an app to the App Store and deploy custom versions of the app in-house, it actually will require both accounts. Like with the enterprise, there's no option to submit to the App Store, just keeping that in mind. So there may be a chance where you have to use both. For the depending on which one you get, what we need to do next is generate the certificate, the application ID, and the provisioning profile for that. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to do a demo showing exactly that. So in this process, we're going to go through the whole process to create the iOS certificate on your Mac, and create all the provisioning profiles to actually compile the app. Let's go through and generate a certificate and a provisioning profile. First, I'm going to make a certificate signing request for my keychain. This is the process that's going to create the certificate and also the private key on my local laptop. I'm entering in my email. For the common name, just for documentation purposes for the key, I'm going to specify the value that I want to use for the name of the private key. Saving it to my desktop. And I'm going to use this later when I get to the Apple developer profile. Save it to location. Next, I'm going to switch over to my Apple developer profile. I'm going to choose the in-house and ad hoc option. And continue. I'm going to drag in that certificate signing request that I created already. Next, I'm going to download the certificate. Just going to store it into my certs folder. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to double click on that cert to automatically add it to my keychain. Now notice when I did that, I have a certificate added here for the expiration date set for 2024, and notice that the name of the key is the one that I set earlier. What I'm doing right now is that I'm exporting and making a backup of my key immediately. This is a very good behavior to do because this is the only private key option that we have for that cert. If the key gets lost, we will have to be able to create a new certificate to compile the app. So it's very critical that this private key gets saved. I'm setting a password for it, and then of course it's going to ask me for my login keychain password. Now that it's exported, what I would do also immediately is to back it up to like another location on the network or somewhere in a secret server or something like that. Now that I've created a certificate, I'm going to go to my identifier. I have an option to create an identifier here, either a wildcard identifier or an explicit ID. In my case, I'm going to create a wildcard. If I wanted to add any kind of capabilities later, like Apple push notification, then I would definitely want to create an explicit ID here. But in my case, a wildcard will be fine. And I'll use this for both my iPad and my iPhone. I'm setting a name for my app ID. And I'm setting wildcard. Notice that all the capabilities went grayed out. What that means is that none of these capabilities are available because I selected a wildcard. Selecting explicit, those options would be available. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on continue, register this. Next, I'm going to create a profile. Now, a profile is a combination, and this is a provisioning profile, and it's a combination of the certificate I just created and the app ID, app identifier that I just created. I'm going to choose an in-house one for in-house distribution. In this dropdown, I'm going to select the wildcard ID I just created. On the next screen, I'm going to choose the cert that I already had previously instead of the new one I just created, because I'm not going to keep this new one. That was just for testing. I'm going to specify a name for my provisioning profile, and this is the value that I'm going to see when I'm in Xcode. So I want to make it as identifiable as possible. I'm going to generate that and then hit download. All right, so I have it here. I'm actually just dragging it from the downloads folder into my certs folder, just so I keep everything together in one place. Now I'm going to double click on that. Now, once I've double clicked on that, what's happened is that it's automatically uploaded it or added it to Xcode. So I'm going to go to my project. And when I get to my project, I'm going to go ahead and open it. And we're going to set the capabilities for both my iPhone and iPad. Okay, so here I am on my project. I'm on the iPad target. and the iPhone target. And what I'm doing here is, if you notice that my bundle identifiers are very similar, except the last either iPad or iPhone. So the wildcard character, the wildcard app ID will work here. So I have two different things that I've done here. On the iPad, I went ahead and selected the distribution profile for both the debug, distribution, and release. But on the iPhone, I'm going to go ahead and keep my dev profile for my debug and just use the new Crescent code distribution I created for my distribution. And this way, if I wanted to build directly to my device, I can do that directly and do a debug session. In order to do that debug session, I do have to use that developer profile. So I'm going to keep that debug there set to developer, and I'm going to go ahead and change it back to my developer. This one I went ahead and set it to both, but just keep in mind I wouldn't be able to debug with the iPad by directly running on my tablet. Okay, once I've done that, I'm gone ahead and I've chosen iPad, and I am building the archive right now. Okay, I'm going to choose Distribute App. It's built successfully. We've created an enterprise provisioning profile insert, so I'm going to choose enterprise here. I'm going to select this is the provisioning profile I just created, and it's going through the process of just compiling here. Now that it's complete, I'm just going to save my IPA off, and I can use this to upload to Meraki or any other MDM that you're using. I also have the option to deploy it in-house. We'll talk about those options next. Okay, so next we're going to talk about different distribution methods. After you've generated your IPA, how do you get that to the various, how do you get that to the end users? So you have a couple choices there. The first one is the public Apple App Store. And there's a few steps to do this. Of course, you would have to have had the Apple developer an account from Apple, which is $99 a year, I believe. And once you do that, you would go through the process to first, in the Apple App Store Connect, you do have to create an app placeholder that will eventually hold the app that you're going to be updating. It has a reference to the name as well as the bundle ID that you've specified in your app. Step 2 is the part where, when you're creating the archive, instead of choosing the enterprise like I did, you would choose the App Store Connect option that's going to submit it to the App Store. And step 3 is, once that process is finished and you go back to your App Store Connect, you're going to see your app sitting there. And the next thing to do is to add other information, like the images, like the UI of your of what your app was looking like on various devices, and also any kind of description, content. You can set if there's an age requirement or age limit, you can go through and set those things as well, and then finally submit that to Apple for review. The second option is, if you're using an enterprise, you can deploy it to EMM or MDM, or even a MAM solution, which is a mobile application management. So you have the option to submit it through different MDMs, like, for example, AirWatch, Mobile Iron, BlackBerry Dynamics, or pretty much any app config compliant mobile device. Mobile management system. In the case that we use, we actually use Meraki in-house for one of them. Once you're there, there's you can do a couple different things. You can use the Apple Business Manager and actually download the apps. Also grab apps that are on the App Store. Usually, you can grab those from the Apple Business App Store, and then download that through Meraki. So if, for example, you did actually publish your app in the App Store and you wanted to, you want it also to be used on your tablets, you could do that as well, right? So if you could get it from the App Store and then push it through your company that way. So actually, you can kind of have both in that respect with just the Apple developer. The other option, of course, is to if you can go to the next slide. The other option is to set up like an internal download page, like a host your own web page internally, where you would allow the users to download your custom app from there. And this requires just a couple files. The first one is of course, the web page that's going to actually show the UI, the view that the user would go to click on it. Instead of referencing the IPA directly, though, you'd have to reference the plist file. This plist is one of the files that gets generated when you do your archive. And but it also requires a little bit of modification. So in your anchor tag in the HTML, you want to reference the plist file, and it's the plist file that actually has the location of the IPA that it'll be downloading. Also want to mention that that wherever you're downloading, it has to be an HTTPS in order for it to serve the IPA file. I think you can click next. I think it'll build that other error. Oh, okay, it's gone. So, but that would be the option. And also one thing I wanted to note about that page is that it just has to run on the device to be able to click it and actually see the pop-up to download that app from there. Okay, so now we're going to talk about various troubleshooting things with MicroStrategy Mobile SDK that you may encounter in the process and things to look out for. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first one, which is a pretty important thing I wanted to mention, was the changes to Apple's push notification. Starting in March 31st, Apple switched from their older legacy system over to a newer push notification service. And we've actually made the changes to support it since like 2020 update 2 and later. But in 22 and update, because that came out last year, you would still see the original Apple push service gateway and port number would have said, the original value, but you just have to change it over to the 443 port in the new API push apple.com. And of course, in 2021, we automatically have those things set for you. So just keep that in mind. If you're upgrading and you encounter any issue with Apple push notifications, you want to make sure that you're using the latest port and latest Apple gateway. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And the other thing I wanted to mention is since iOS 15 came out this past Monday, we wanted to make sure you're aware of a potential issue that could happen when you're running your compiled apps on your devices. So for this particular issue, Apple has made some enhancements to their security mechanism, and that security change may cause those problems when you're running a custom app. This wouldn't have any issue if your app is going through the App Store because Apple has already taken care of that. But the reason why they did this is because they wanted to improve and improve and certify that you are the app's creator. And it also helps Apple kind of protect against any malicious or unwanted modifications to your signed app. So that's the reason why they introduced it. And this would actually apply to any app, not just MicroStrategy, but any app that's been compiled and that you're pushing to a device directly, any other means other than going through the App Store. So for the custom app distributed ad hoc or through the enterprise program, you have to do one of two things. So if you're on Catalina, the Mac that you use to compile the app is Catalina, you'll have to re-sign that IPA that we just generated in a previous demo. If you're in Big Sur, you have the option of either generating a brand new IPA, which would also solve the issue, or go through the same steps to re-sign the app. We have a great K-Base article on this. If you go to our community.microstrategy.com and search for iOS 15 to get more detail on that. But let's go to the next slide. And let's just go through a demo. If you do have to do the re-sign of the custom app, it's easy because you don't have to make any changes to the IPA. You don't have to recompile. You just go through the process just to re-sign it. But let's start the demo to show how to accomplish that. In this demo, I have a device with iPadOS 15 installed. The app was compiled with the Apple Enterprise Developer Profile and has been deployed to this device using Meraki MDM. When I try to launch the app, I see the error that happens that the app does need to be updated. Now let's go through the process to re-sign this app archive using the MacCode sign utility. So the items I need is the Mac that contains the signing certificate and profile used previously to create the app archive itself, and a terminal window. So let's get started. So the first step that we need to do is get to the app archive and change the .ipa extension to zip. Use zip. And let's go ahead and unzip the contents. The file that's inside this payload folder is the one that we want to update. This is the one that we're looking to update. So the information that we need to re-sign the app is the code sign identity. To get the information, let's go to terminal and make a call to security, find identity, -v, -p, code signing. Find the one that you used during compilation and copy the value in the double quotes to use for later. Now let's type in the command to code sign the app. Before we do that, we're going to navigate to the payload folder. Okay, we're there. I'm going to start typing in code sign -s, the code sign identity. I'll paste that in here. Between double quotes, -f, preserve metadata, let me add one more dash there. Generate entitlement DER. And finally, the name of the app archive. It's hyperaqdep.app. Make sure that you see that message there that says replacing the existing signature, and this means that it was successful. Now what we want to do is we want to recompress the archive. So I'm going to right click on payload and then just choose compress. Now I'm going to rename this back to IPA. Okay, once this new app is deployed, it will successfully open on the device. Now we're seeing the app update on the device. Now when I tap the app, it will successfully open. Thanks. Okay, so on to the next slide. Other troubleshooting things that to keep in mind is the situation if you're updating your mobile app and you find that the old preferences is still being referenced. This goes back to those three options I was mentioning about the use bundle preferences, override existing preferences, and the update existing preferences. So the first thing you want to do is the reason why it's not updating is to just run this command on your in your browser to go to the purge caches. This is a really quick option if you want to just quickly purge the caches in memory of any file in memory. So say, for example, that maybe the configuration was updated, but that latest configuration version wasn't uploaded in the mobile server's memory. So you can either restart the app server, or you can run this command to choose the options to purge those caches. And what will happen is on the next load, it will reload those options into the memory, then the new configuration files into the memory. So that's the first thing, just in case it hasn't been updated. The second option is to test if uninstalling the app and then installing that new version of the app solves the issue. If it does, then most likely the culprit will be these three settings, whether the update existing preferences might have been set to no, or if you are pushing a brand new configuration, the override existing preferences might have been set to no. So to resolve that, you should definitely recompile that new app that you're configuring to set those options to true, and then use that one to push out. Now, because the users already had the app installed, if we can go to the next slide, we want to be able to remedy the situation for those particular users. So option 1 is to have the user install that app over the existing app and then go into settings, look for the app in the list on the left, and then choose the option to reset the application. And what will happen is that once they relaunch the app again, it would have to have been killed from the background. Relaunch it again, it should remove the device caches and reload and upload the new bundle preferences for that user. Option 2 is, again, to uninstall the older app and to install the fresh new app. And I wanted to point out that the mobile configuration that we showed in the demo, that counter variable is the one that would have to have changed in order to take on the new updated preferences. So for example, if on the device, the mobile configuration that I was using was set to, had the counter variable set to 0, if the new configuration that's coming through is still set to 0, then it won't know that it needs to update. So even if I have my update existing preferences set to true, it will still depend on the value of this counter variable. So that's one thing to look for. So if you just want to make sure and compare that counter variable has been updated when you're updating the app with the new configuration, just to make sure it'll update correctly. All right, let's go to the next slide. Also, during the process of troubleshooting, there is a few different log files that would be helpful. One option is to use the simulator and then watch and look at the logs that happen in the debug area in Xcode. That's one option. Another one is to actually do a test and test your mobile configuration that you created instead of in your custom app, and actually test it in the MicroStrategy out-of-the-box App Store app. That I feel will rule out if it's an issue with the custom mobile app, or if it's another issue specific with the dashboards or the mobile configuration. And depending on where that goes, the next part could be to turn on Fiddler and enable the configure Fiddler so it will track the requests coming in through mobile. Also, Charles Proxy is actually an app that you can install on your mobile device. There might be a small fee, but that one's really good because it will actually show you all of the HTTP traffic that's leaving your test device. Also, of course, if you have a crash, all the crash logs will appear in Settings, Privacy, Analytics and Improvements, and Analytics Data. You'll see I always try to look for, you should see the name of your app listed there in the crash list. But sometimes if a crash happened maybe before your app or after, you could actually be listed as a different name. So one thing I do is I just note the time the crash happened and then just kind of look through the list if I don't see one for my particular app to see if it might have occurred at like a different level, before it got to your app or something. It might show in a different process there. And the other thing is also to check for the logs on the mobile server. And also finally on the DSS the DSS errors log on the iServer. Depending on where we found the issue, like whether it's happening in the app or on the or within the document or within the iServer, all of these logs along the way will help find out and diagnose the next steps and what to do next. And always open to open a MicroStrategy support case as well. We can assist. Okay, go to the next slide. So with that, I'd like to introduce Holly Stevens to talk about the technology roadmap for MicroStrategy Mobile SDK.
Awesome. Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Holly. I'm our product manager here for MicroStrategy Mobile and a few of our other products. But we're just going to briefly review a few updates for this year. So first, we will be supporting iOS 15 with 2021 Update 3. And a few notes here, the same that Regina kind of mentioned. But if you're a customer that uses TestFlight or downloads directly from the App Store, you should be good to go with iOS 15 because know what Regina told us earlier about Apple's new requirement for that more secure app signature. If you're downloading from the App Store, it's already done for you. If you have a custom app or custom deployment, again, just make sure that you're checking that re-sign option. And just in the interest of time, because we are at the top of the hour, if you have more questions about this, we're happy to take them during Q&A. And then just this next slide, if you are looking to use Xcode 13, We are looking to support that moving forward. So more likely in the next few releases, Q4, Q1 timeline. So keep that in mind. So just a few quick housekeeping items for product that we wanted to mention. Again, our team is going to be here for Q&A, so feel free to ask us anything. But now we do want to tell you a little bit more about all of the education resources that we have for MicroStrategy Mobile and SDK. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Anahi.
Hello, thank you, Holly. My name is Ana Serrano. I am an senior education consultant with MicroStrategy. In education, we have over 40 plus classes available with live instruction and self-paced learning, covering a broad range of features and tools in MicroStrategy. So depending on your needs, we have 2 passes available. The Analyst Pass, which contains a sampling of our classes in popular areas of interest, and the Architect Pass, which includes the full catalog. Now, if you are interested in some training in the areas that we've covered today, specifically all the customization that we've done and the administration topics that were also covered, this next slide that we're going to show are those 2 specific classes. So 2021.221 SDK for customizing iOS applications is going to cover a lot of the topics that were discussed about the tools that you would use for building the app. And 2021.321 administration for enterprise mobility is on the MicroStrategy side. So if you're looking at, well, how do I do the customization or the administration features for that customization, that we were covering, those would be in that administration class. So I hope you guys are going to show up in our courses and are interested in those classes. So we're going to take it over now for the Q&A. We'll get everybody back.
All right. Thanks, Nahi. I really appreciate that. Okay, now we're ready to start the Q&A portion of today's session. Thank you so much again to all of our presenters that have spoken today. You guys provided a lot of insight on this topic. And now we're going to go ahead and start the Q&A. I see there's been a couple questions submitted. Let me see. We do have a little bit of time. So, feel free to continue adding your questions using the Q&A feature in the chat. And let's see, what do we got so far? Keep it coming, chat. We have the one of the questions that came from Twitter, correct? Someone put that in the live chat, so we can go ahead and get it answered. I think. All right. So here's a Twitter question. Let me see if I can post it on here. Can someone post that Twitter question on the chat, and then we can put it on the here we go. Okay, let's go ahead and show this one. Is there a dedicated folder for deploying custom visualizations to the MicroStrategy library? It seems like the questionnaire put some custom visualizations inside the plugin folder inside Tomcat, but his library cannot read the JavaScript file.
Yeah, so I can take this at least to start. So a few quick kind of tips. We do support a few of our D3 visualizations with Library SDK. So my recommendation would be to reach out to support and kind of just ask them about the specific visualization that you're interested in. Again, we're definitely happy to help. We are also having our next webinar on everything library. So library web, library mobile, all of that. So please make sure to attend. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else here wants to add anything to that answer, but we should have a lot on library coming up.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question, Holly. Before we go on to the next question, any of our other presenters have any insight? If not, I'll go ahead and move on to the next question here. Okay, so we have a question from Santosh Kumar. How you doing today, sir? Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we're gonna get to your questions. So Santosh adds that he has an application for his iPad with users ranging from iOS 11 to the current one. So how do we approach this?
I can take this one. So this depends on your. This depends on how you're deploying it. So if you're deploying it, if you have an MDM or some kind of EMM, and that's what you're using to deploy to your users, what I found is that there's when I deploy a new app, if for example I'm running like an older version like iOS 12, it did not receive, like, you can control which apps are sent out to which users. So for example, if I've had a previous version deployed, like a MicroStrategy Mode, like 2020 update 2, for example, which still supported iOS 12, I can actually choose in Meraki, like when I do an update of one that dropped iOS 12 and is now only to iOS like 11, I can target the ones that I'm going to push the new app to. And some MDMs are actually smart enough to also handle that as well, that it won't actually auto push the app that's not supported on that particular device. So just also kind of depends on your deployment method there.
All right. Thank you so much, Regina, for the answer to that question. And we'll go on to the next one. We have Williams is asking if he's building an app with Flutter, can he embed MicroStrategy?
I can take that question. I assume using Flutter you're building through the Android SDK. Currently I'm not aware the capability of embedding for Android SDK, but I highly recommend you to put detailed requirements through support case, so we can take a look. It really depends on what is your use case. So we would like to know more about your use case and provide the feedback.
All right. Thank you so much, G, for answering Williams's question. I think we're going to wait a couple more minutes to get the next question here. No problem, Santosh. That's what we're here for. If you have any other questions, please feel free to put it on the chat feature, and then we can continue. All right. Any other questions? Give it a couple more seconds before we go ahead and move on here. Santosh, I don't know if you're still here, but I see you asked two questions, one at the very top of the chat and one at the very bottom. Are they the same questions, or did you get your question answered by Holly? Okay. All right, and I think that will conclude our Q&A for today. All right. Oh, we got one more. One more came in last minute at the buzzer beater here. What Xcode version should they use?
I can take this one. So on each of the projects that you download for the mobile SDK, there is a README text file that is available. To make sure you read that README text as it does
on YouTube, but we'll also send any kind of resources that we can give you, such as links, technical documentations to help further answer some of these questions that you guys have today. Okay. We have another one from Santosh. He says, can we enable push notifications based on transactions?
I can take this one. So you absolutely can do that. What you need is to have some kind of so I'm assuming that by transactions, you mean like you would do some kind of transaction and it would like change the number of how many items you wanted to process. But you should have some kind of like a report or freeform SQL report that's tracking like how many transaction items you have left. And then what that would do is that would update. So as the user is doing the transactions, it would like keep a track of the number of transactions they have like remaining, right? Because you want to make sure that your Apple push is based on a metric that will change, right? You don't want it to be on a static metric, because then it will show that same value in the Apple, in the badge push that whole time. So just make sure that you have your freeform SQL that's tracking the number of requests after the user has done the transactions, and then use that to create an alert subscription. And in the alert subscription, that's where you're going to set up your device and the amount of times that you want to push. So for example, you can set it on a schedule to push like to check every 5 minutes to see if it needs to send like a new push, or check once an hour. It really depends on how often you want to see that push happen. But yeah, that's definitely possible.
All right. Thank you so much, Regina, for answering that question. And for the sake of time, I think we do have to conclude our Q&A for today. And of course, our support team is always available to help you through any of your questions. Just head on over to microstrategy.com/support, and then we can go ahead and answer any other questions you may have. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with a little bit of our presentation here. Regina, G, David, Holly, thank you so much for everything that you've done for us today. You've provided a lot of information for us to help out with Mobile SDK, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care, guys. All right, so to continue with our presentation, I want to go ahead and advertise the next webinar that we have. And next month on October 29th, we're going to talk about MicroStrategy Library. It's an amazing application, and you can learn how you can leverage this interactive web-based application to view, present, and analyze dossiers and your RSDs, your report services document. We're going to tune in live here on YouTube Live on Friday, October 29th, so about a month from now, at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be notified to tune in. And we're going to have all of our webinars on YouTube Live from now on, just so we can get more engagement from the chat. Thank you so much for everyone who has come through today, all the questions. I hope they've been answered nicely. And we're going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. If you have any other further questions about Mobile SDK, you can reach out to us through our expert.now or by opening up a support ticket. If you would like to gain enhanced access to experts on a regular basis, then please visit our website to learn more about how you can upgrade to one of our 3 premium support plans. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope it was helpful for you and really appreciate anyone who attended today. And remember to join us in October for our next Top Tip series. Have a wonderful Friday, everybody.